Hey everyone, welcome back to another video from A Man Talks FPL SC. In today's video, we're going through the Game Week 13 team selection. Let's see how the team is going to shape up for Game Week 13, what my transfer thoughts are, also get into a bit of a discussion around my updated thoughts on Antonio, Ben Chilwell replacements, also a little bit on the fixture congestion coming up in December, so do stick around if you do enjoy it. So if you do enjoy it, give it a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing to the channel if you do enjoy the content, but let's get straight into it. If you haven't checked out my Game Week 13 initial thoughts video, do check that out. If you want to get a bit more in-depth kind of review of Game Week 12, I'll just do a pretty brief summary of it. I got 85 points in Game Week 12, which is a very great result. Another green arrow up to 12.7k, so very happy with how the season's going so far, and the wildcard that I played in Game Week 8 has really helped. I think it's now 4 or 5 consecutive green arrows, so obviously very pleased with that. Can't get too ahead of ourselves. Obviously the defense really carried the team in Game Week 12. You know, Trent, James, Cancelo, probably the holy trinity. And then you add in Ben Chilwell, or you could add in like a Sergio Reguilon or a Rudiger. If you had either of those two, you had a very good game week, more or less. Salah and Jota from Liverpool looking very impressive, so very happy with the pair of them. The others not so well. Tony did get a goal, but Mbeumo, Kane and Antonio all blanked, and Ramsdale, pretty tough matchup, only getting the 1 point, but really can't complain too much with the team. But let's see what I'm planning to do for Game Week 13. So this is how I'm lining up for Game Week 13. Very happy with the back five. You know, Ramsdale against Newcastle at home. I think that's a great fixture. Newcastle have looked like they're trying to get a bit more of an attacking philosophy into their team. Hopefully that means more saves for Ramsdale, but Arsenal's defense hopefully should be good enough to keep a clean sheet. Otherwise, I'm expecting at least a few save points here from Ramsdale. The back four, obviously very happy with the four of them. You know, Trent, Alexander-Arnold against Southampton. I think that's a great matchup on paper. Good potential for a clean sheet and also some attacking returns. If you haven't seen the highlights of the midweek game against Juventus, if you watch that game, you just have to bring in Reece James. He looks so impressive, you know, technically very skilled. His passing is amazing, you know, great shooting ability. He scored a goal in that particular game and he's been one of the best buys of the season for myself. So I think he's one of the top priority transfers in if you don't have him in the team already. I think same can be also said for João Cancelo. Again, looked very impressive last week. It's a bit of a tougher matchup at home to West Ham, but you know, Man City's defense is very strong, and so I do think there is still potential for a clean sheet. I think the chances of a clean sheet are definitely less so than compared to say like a Trent, but Cancelo's always got the attacking threat, so definitely he's going to be played. I've even got the vice captaincy on him at the moment, but that could very easily probably be someone like Trent, although I might avoid playing the vice captain and the captaincy in the same game. Did have Ben Chilwell lined up against Manchester United at home, but unfortunately he's got that pretty serious looking injury in that midweek fixture against Juventus. At the time that I'm recording this, it's now Thursday evening my time. It's still a day before the updated press conferences from Thomas Tuchel. Based on what I'm seeing though, and based on how the injury looked, it could be pretty serious. I'm not going to stand here and pretend I'm a doctor and know how long the prognosis is, but something I'll get into a little bit later in the video is the fixture congestion. Basically, it just means that if players now are going to be injured for like 1 to 2 weeks, even more than that, it's more than the 1 to 2 game weeks, because we're going to have a lot of midweek game weeks. So I'm potentially thinking if Chilwell's out for just a 1 week, just a short term, I've got enough bench depth there. You can see I've got Antonio on the bench. I could play him against Manchester City, and I could hold Chilwell because he's obviously going to be a great asset moving forward. But what I'm more likely thinking is that he's going to be out for longer term, and I think if that is the case, unfortunately, he's going to be a sell. It's not a sell that I wanted to plan to do. Of course not. Chilwell's been amazing, but if he is out for more than the 1 to 2 weeks, I think I'm going to be having to sell him. I will get into some of the replacements just in a little bit as well. Just taking a look at the rest of the team, overall pretty happy with it. I mean, Salah captaincy, I'm not going to overthink this one. Salah at home and Anfield. If you saw how Liverpool played against Arsenal in the second half, they just tore them to shreds. Best attacking team, both in terms of goals scored, you know, underlying data. So not overthinking that. Salah will be the captain. I'm playing Rafinha against Brighton. Last season, Leeds were pretty poor against Brighton overall. I think Brighton were pretty good in terms of measuring up to them, but I thought Leeds were quite impressive against Spurs, especially in that first half, and that was without Rodrigo and Rafinha and also Bamford. So hopefully Rafinha, if he is past fit, I think there were pictures of him being spotted in training, which gives me some good faith in that he potentially will play on the weekend, because I think he's one of those players who's that essential to Leeds that if he's even like 80% fit, they'll play him. So I'm hopeful that he will get a start. And so against Brighton, I don't think it's the easiest matchup, but he's a good player in form, so I do think that he is worthy, obviously, of selection. And Jota, similar thoughts that I've echoed for Trent and Salah. He got a great fixture. He also was named on the bench in the Champions League, so I am thinking that he probably is fit, hopefully. We'll get another press conference, obviously getting an update from Klopp, but at the moment I do think that he is fit, and if he is fit, he'll play definitely in the team. The Brentford boys against Everton. Everton statistically in the last 4 game weeks have actually been the worst defense in terms of, I think, expected goals conceded. So definitely looking like I'm going to be playing the pair of them. I think, obviously I'm not expecting much from Mbeumo. He's just been giving you 2 pointers for the past few weeks, but it's a good matchup at home to Everton, who are looking really, really poor. They've also been hit with injuries to Demarai Gray, Richarlison suspended for this game, to go along with all the injuries they've already got to like Calvert-Lewin, to Doucouré. So Everton are looking really, really ravaged. So I think Tony and Mbeumo are definitely worthy of a play here. And Kane away to Burnley. So I think Burnley are going to be without Tarkowski and Westwood, I think, from memory. So that probably does weaken them just a little bit. And I think Spurs did have some encouraging signs in the second half against Leeds. So Kane, obviously I'm not going to be benching him. And hopefully he can get us a return against Burnley. I'm going to stick to the plan. I think with Kane, he'll probably stay in my team for the next 3 game weeks. He'll get Burnley, Brentford and Norwich, and after that I think we can reassess whether we want to stick with him or potentially make a move to maybe another mid-range forward or even straight to Cristiano Ronaldo. On the bench there you can see not too many surprises. I mean, Livramento away to Liverpool, are definitely not going to want to be playing him in this particular game week, and Josh Brownhill is just kind of a third bench fodder. At the moment, as I mentioned previously, I've got Antonio first sub. Obviously, he's had a pretty decent record actually against Man City in the past, so it could be a risk. You could potentially, play him over like an Mbeumo. I haven't 100% kind of been set on this call to bench Antonio, but Mbeumo, I think I maybe want to play the fixture just a little bit. Maybe the decision will be made for me. Someone in my starting 11 could get rotated or could get rested, and then Antonio comes on anyway. But at the moment, I'm just playing the fixture. Also, partly in my head, I'm thinking, would I be more annoyed if I played Antonio and I saw Mbeumo score on my bench? Or would I be more annoyed if I saw Mbeumo starting and Antonio scoring on my bench? I think I'd be more annoyed seeing Mbeumo score on my bench. It's a pretty dumb reason, but that's the reason at the moment that I'm going for Mbeumo, because, if Antonio scores against Man City, I'll be like, well, it's Man City. I couldn't have called him scoring. Best defense statistically potentially in the league, whereas Everton have been the worst over the past 4 game weeks. And so if I didn't play Mbeumo and I saw him score, I'd be like, oh, obviously I should have played him. So that's my dumb reasoning for why I'm playing Mbeumo over Antonio at this point in time. But definitely follow me on Twitter as well, as I do post my final teams prior to deadline. But that's how I'll be lining up for Game Week 13. I've got the 1 free transfer. And now let's get into probably what likely will be my 1 move for the game week, which is my Ben Chilwell replacement. And so in terms of the kind of 3 Ben Chilwell replacements that I'm potentially looking to bring in if it's confirmed that Chilwell is out for the long term, it's Marcus Alonso, Antonio Rudiger and Sergio Reguilon. When I first heard about Ben Chilwell's injury and the potential kind of severity of it, my first initial thought was Alonso. So that's already kind of going to be probably what I'm most likely going to move to. It seems in my head the most obvious replacement, because Marcus Alonso was starting the season when Chilwell was out, and it looked very, very good. You can see that he'd averaged 6.5 points per appearance for the first 6 game weeks, so looking very good. He had 1 goal and 1 assist. Good underlying expected goals and expected assist stats. For context, Ben Chilwell's expected goals is around 0.19, so Alonso's is not too far behind. So he is definitely matching him in that kind of expected goal stat. And we know how far advanced the Chelsea wing-backs play. So I think Alonso seems the most natural replacement. Obviously Chelsea have got an amazing defence and the fixtures are pretty good. You can see there, Manchester United at home on paper looks tough, but we know that Manchester United have not been playing very well recently. Then it's Watford, West Ham, Leeds, Everton, Wolves. I think it's a good fixture run for Chelsea. There probably inevitably will be some rotation, but I think the rotation that Alonso might get is probably going to be the same as Ben Chilwell. Rudiger would probably be the safe switch in terms of getting in that more nailed Chelsea defender, but given that Alonso is 0.3 cheaper, to me it made sense to go for the more attacking upside replacement in Alonso. He's definitely probably going to be the most first choice option at left wing back. I think they could play potentially Hudson-Odoi, Pulisic I've even heard be potentially used as an option at left wing back. But to me, it doesn't make sense for those two when he's got a ready-made replacement in Marcus Alonso. Reguilon is someone I did briefly think about as well if I did want to get a little bit of that Spurs defense. I just prefer, though, the Chelsea defense. The Chelsea defense has been so good so far this season, and we know that Alonso has definitely got some FPL pedigree. And the one stat I did find from Andrew Gower, I just showed it on here from Twitter. So if there was any concerns around, is Alonso actually going to be the one who's going to, take Chilwell's spot now that he's injured? I thought this was some interesting stats just to kind of, alleviate those concerns. So it says here, percentage of games started at left back or left wing back for Chelsea under Tuchel. Chilwell 54% of the time and Alonso 46% of the time, so pretty even to be honest. Percentage of minutes played 53 versus 45, and then other players 2%. I think the bottom part of this is where I found really, really interesting, because we know we're coming up into a definite fixture congestion period. So Chelsea have 11 games in 36 days. The best that Alonso's done under Tuchel is 11 in 50 days. So he has had that previous experience of actually playing quite a few games in a short period of time, 5 games in 19 days. So for me, I think Alonso is probably the most natural replacement, and he's probably who I'm going to be getting in for Ben Chilwell. Now, I did also prepare this slide in terms of is Antonio a sell. This was prior to the Ben Chilwell news, because obviously now that the fact that Chilwell is injured and probably likely to be a transfer out, I'm probably not going to be transferring out Antonio. I did touch on this in my initial thoughts video, but for anyone who hasn't got Chilwell and is potentially thinking about Antonio, I thought this was very interesting looking at the comparison of the first 6 game weeks to the last 6 game weeks. Basically, we're seeing a massive drop off in Antonio's stats. You can see that he scored 47 points in the first 6 game weeks. Now he's only scored 16. He had 5 goals, 4 assists. Now it's just the 1 goal and 0 assists. And the underlying stats also back this up. 4.68 expected goals, 1.87 expected assists in the first 6 game weeks, and it's dropped all the way down to 1.92 and 1.25, and the shots are down as well. 25 shots down to 13. And definitely the fixtures do play a part in this. You can see the first 6 games for West Ham, were very, very good. He did miss that game against Manchester United at home, but either way, still you can see that there's a tremendous drop off in stats, and you can see the next 6 for Antonio are pretty tough in terms of Man City, Brighton, Chelsea, and then Burnley, Arsenal, and Norwich. I mean, Norwich is obviously a good fixture. Burnley away is probably a pretty good fixture as well, but he's got Man City, Brighton, Chelsea, and Arsenal, who are pretty good defenses statistically speaking. So I think Antonio has got some tough matches coming up. I don't begrudge anyone selling Antonio, and in truth be told, if Ben Chilwell didn't get injured, I was going to sell Antonio this game week, and I was probably going to sell him for Josh King, just to create some budget. And what I discussed in that initial thoughts video, it would have been selling Josh King to create some funds, and then using that money to upgrade Mbeumo or potentially even Rafinha in the coming game weeks. But now that Ben Chilwell's been injured, I'm not looking to take a -4 this particular game week, so I'm probably just going to be making the Ben Chilwell to Alonso. So I've just jumped onto LiveFPL just to kind of show you what the plan is probably for the next few game weeks. Obviously, originally I was going to do the Antonio down to King, but given the updated news on Ben Chilwell, what is probably going to be the most likely transfer for me this game week is Ben Chilwell out for Alonso. Unfortunately, it's a transfer we kind of have to make, because with the fixtures coming up, I think we can't afford to really miss out on the good defense from Chelsea, and I think Alonso obviously has got that high upside. So he's the one who I'm going to be bringing in for Ben Chilwell. So Alonso's now in the team. As you can see there, I think overall it looks pretty good. Haven't fully decided on playing Antonio over Mbeumo, but Mbeumo's got the good fixture, so I do think I'm probably leaning to this way. Antonio would be first on my bench. Just ignore the order that I've got there at the moment. So now looking ahead to game week 14, I've got that 1 free transfer, and I've got 0.3 in the bank from making that Ben Chilwell down to Alonso switch. What's really frustrating about that move is that it creates 0.3 in the bank, which leaves me 0.1 short of actually going from Mbeumo to Smith Rowe, who I would have liked as a bit of an upgrade on Mbeumo, because I just don't think Mbeumo is going to be a good option moving forward for the next, just for the next few game weeks. He hasn't really shown enough, whereas Smith Rowe obviously has been overperforming, but I don't actually mind Arsenal's fixtures. So obviously they had Newcastle in game week 13, but moving forward they have Manchester United away, then it's Everton, Southampton, West Ham, Leeds, Norwich, Wolves. It's not a bad long-term run for Arsenal, and they have the benefit of actually not playing in Europe. So that means that over this busy period, they're not going to be as impacted by some of the other bigger clubs. And so that was ideally what I was going to potentially do, but 0.1 short of that, which is kind of frustrating, but anyway, we have to live with that. So for game week 14, again, I don't think the team is in too bad of a shape. I don't necessarily have to make a move this particular game week. I probably would definitely play Antonio over Mbeumo in this particular game week. Brighton at home, for Antonio 14. I think that fixture's fine to play him. And so I think the rest of the team looks fine. I mean, Chelsea, I think there would potentially be some rotation in this game week, because this is a midweek fixture for Chelsea. Watford away, obviously ideally if they played it would be amazing, because it's a good fixture on paper, but I'm not expecting both of them to play. Hopefully one of the Chelsea wingbacks can play, but otherwise I think overall the team looks pretty good. If one of them drops out, we have Livramento at home to Leicester, so I don't think that's a horrible fixture for him to come off the bench. Otherwise, we'd have Mbeumo as well. So I think the bench is strong enough to cope with a couple of rotations in this particular game week. So now looking ahead to game week 15, we'd have the 2 free transfers. Again, 0.3 in the bank. To be honest, when I look at the team, I don't actually think it needs really a change, because I think most of the players have got good fixtures. So to be honest, I'm not actually planning really any particular moves in this game week. What I'm just going to do, I'm just going to let the midweek fixtures play out. I'm sure there's going to be some issue crop up, because FPL loves to throw a bit of a curveball our way, so there potentially could be an injury, could be a rotation. Otherwise, it just gives me an extra week of data just to kind of see different players performing if there's someone I really, really want to get. And the benefit would be having the 2 free transfers gives you that extra flexibility. But otherwise, I think the rest of the team is okay this game week, because Mbeumo and Mbeumo and Tony are coming up against Leeds. So I think that's a good fixture. We can bench Antonio again at home to Chelsea. And so again, I think the team is, overall the squad's strong enough, to handle any rotation. And I think having the 2 free transfers without a plan, it's not a horrible place to be. I mean, at the time, if there's no issues, then I might be scratching my head thinking, what should I do? Maybe I upgrade Brownhill to like another 4.5 billion midfielder like a Norman, but I'm sure FPL will give me a dilemma to solve. So that's going to be the plan for Game Week 15. No moves really, I think, needed for Game Week 15. Coming into Game Week 16, this is the key week when Manchester United do get on their really, really nice fixture run where they come up against Norwich at away, I believe it is. They do have Crystal Palace in Game Week 15. You could potentially target in that game week, but then Kane has Norwich in that particular game week. So really, I think the only Manchester United player I'd probably be considering at this point is Ronaldo. No way do I have no interest at the moment in the Manchester United defence. And then in the midfield, I mean, you could potentially consider Greenwood, Rashford. Bruno hasn't had a shot on target, I think, in the last 2 months, I think the stat is. So he's not really looking like an option. Ronaldo, even though the team is floundering, he's still posting some good underlying stats. And so I realistically think he's probably the only one I'd go for. And so I think having the 2 free transfers is beneficial in this game week because we've also got Rafinha coming into a really, really tough run. You can see there, Leeds will have Chelsea, Manchester City, Arsenal, and then Liverpool. So it's a really, really tough 4 games. The benefit, I think, with Rafinha is that he's nailed on. He'll play the 90 minutes, but I think there is opportunities to also, target probably a better attacker. And so potentially what I would do is probably a double switch of Kane out for Ronaldo, and then Rafinha out for another mid-price midfielder. I would have enough money in the bank. I'd have 6.7. The downside of this plan is that Bernardo Silva or a Manchester City midfielder is someone who I really, really wanted, but I think with the tight budget that I've got, it might be difficult to get to one of them. But as you can see there, West Ham do go into a really nice run of games from Game Week 16, especially from Game Week 18 actually. So Jared Bowen, I think he's posting a lot of good underlying stats. You may be familiar with a lot of other kind of content creators have been hyping him up recently because he's been posting some good underlying stats. And I think West Ham overall is still a decent attacking team. And so you can see here in Game Week 16, Chelsea up against Leeds, Liverpool against Aston Villa, Cancelo's got Wolves, Ramsdale's got Southampton. So I think overall the team is looking really, really good. Even the Brentford guys, they've got Watford. So this is my thing. I think ideally I wouldn't want to have Mbeumo, but the benefit of holding onto Tony and Mbeumo in this period of time is that Tony, especially he himself, is going to be nailed on for 90 minutes. So you know that he's going to be, probably hopefully immune to fixture rotation. And I think they still have some decent games. You saw they had Leeds in the previous game week. They've got Watford this game week. So I'm more inclined to actually hold on to the pair of them. And, I definitely would be playing Antonio over Mbeumo in this particular game week. And so again, I think the squad overall looks quite good. We've got a good first sub in Mbeumo at home to Watford. And then, if there's any rotation, we've got a good first sub. Livramento, obviously at Arsenal, is not a great fixture, but we know he's playing. And then Brownhill's still a playing option as well. So even though the bench hasn't got a lot of high value players, I think the fact that they're all playing is probably good enough in my opinion. And so this would be my kind of rough plan at the moment up until Game Week 16. So not really planning that many moves in actuality, just letting the game kind of dictate the moves for the next few game weeks. But this is probably going to be what I likely would do in Game Week 16. And yeah, as I mentioned, let the game kind of throw the curveballs my way with this busy fixture schedule. So what I'll get into now is, if that's probably going to be my team selection portion of the video done with. I'll get into now though is a bit of the discussion around the fixture congestion, because I think from now on it's probably good to keep this in the back of our minds when you're planning your transfers, because you don't want to be going too thin on the bench. And also, if you're potentially looking to bring in players, just having a little bit of an extra consideration around how nailed on are they rotation proof. So you can see I've kind of already mentioned in my future moves in that I'm keeping guys like Tony because they're pretty nailed on, still have some okay fixtures even though they've looked a little bit underwhelming. I think at this point in the season, having 3 playing bench options in Mbeumo, Brownhill, Livramento and Foster, who are all playing players, I think will be really beneficial. So enough of the ranting, let's get into some fixture discussion. So I just put together this bit of a graphic just to kind of visualize, I think, a little bit easier the fixture congestion that's coming up. I've mentioned quite a few times in this video and probably in my previous videos as well. But you can see now, coming into December, we're getting into a lot of fixtures crammed together. So you can see Game Week 13, this particular game week is okay. But then we've got Game Week 14 next week as a very early midweek game week. And then again in the weekend after that, we've got Game Week 15, a few days of break. And then it's Game Week 16. Game Week 17 is again midweek. Game Week 18 on the weekend. Bit of a break up until Game Week 19. But from Game Week 19 to Game Week 22, you can see that it's pretty chaotic. You've got Game Week 19. Straight after that, you've got Game Week 20. 1 day break. Then you're into Game Week 21. basically, I don't have to read this out for you. There's going to be a lot of fixtures being played, and that means there's going to be a lot of rotation. So I wanted to also show this graphic made by @LegomaniaFPL. It's a great graph that he's made. Do follow him on Twitter as well. It's a great visualization of every team's fixtures up until from now up until around game week 21, which is, as you can see, that's kind of when the crazy fixture congestion ended. So you can see, understandably, a lot of the top teams, because they've got European fixtures and also some cup competitions, they've got a lot of fixtures, and we're definitely going to see rotation from a lot of these teams. So hopefully the text isn't too small. Basically, I've counted, excluding the European fixtures, so basically starting from game week 13, Liverpool, Chelsea, Leicester, West Ham and Tottenham are playing 11 fixtures from game week 13 up until game week 21, and that's basically in the span of just over a month. So that's 11 fixtures in around 30 something days. That's around a fixture every 3 days. So there's going to be a lot of rotation from these top teams, again adding credence to that argument of having a slightly stronger bench. Now, I don't necessarily think a strong bench needs to be like a Tony, a Smith Rowe and like a Livramento. I think it can be cheaper than that. I think strong bench, in my opinion, just means 3 outfield players who all play. I think sometimes those 2-point, options that can come off your bench, like a Brownhill, I think those are still invaluable because 2 points is better than 0. So if you're carrying someone like, say, Keenan Davis, who's a 4.5 million striker option, I think that can be a little bit thin, especially if you've got a lot of players like Jota, Foden, the Chelsea wingbacks, a lot of players from these big top clubs. They're the ones who normally rotate the most and have got the most fixtures. So that is just something to bear in mind, I think, when you're kind of building your squad up. You can see there Man City, Man United, Arsenal and Brentford have 10 fixtures in the next kind of month or so. And then a lot of the kind of quote-unquote smaller clubs, apologies to fans from those clubs, like Leeds, Everton, Villa, Newcastle, Wolves, Crystal Palace, Southampton, Brighton, Burnley, Norwich and Watford. They've got 9 fixtures, so they've got a couple of fixtures less than some of those top teams. And so what that means is that, by looking at more reliable, nailed-on options, it kind of makes sense to go for players who have less fixtures in the month ahead. The downside of that is that typically they don't have as good of the FPL options as your top clubs. So basically what I just want to stress here is that I think having 3 outfield players on your bench who do play, I think is going to be good enough during this December period. It's very rare that you often have to dip into that kind of third substitution spot, but you probably will maybe once or twice during this busy period need that. So I think just in those couple of times where instead of having a Keenan Davis, you can get someone off the bench who gives you 2 points, I think that is something that is still important to consider. So I think, I just wanted to visualize this, and also in my previous graphic, that there's going to be a lot of fixtures coming up. So I think when you're planning your transfers for the busy month ahead, do consider options who are a little bit more nailed on and try to eliminate kind of those complete fodder options, I think, who don't give you anything off the bench. And that's just probably going to be my general advice, I think, moving forward. Alright guys, that is my Game Week 13 team selection. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. A little bit of discussion around my team, but also some of my more general thoughts for that upcoming fixture frenzy. Honestly, it's the best time for FPL though. There's so many games coming thick and fast. There's constantly football on the telly, which is amazing. So I definitely enjoyed this period, but it just means to be a little bit more engaged because the deadlines are going to be coming thick and fast. And I think the ones who plan a little bit better can come out ahead. So it's definitely an opportunity where you can make a lot of ground in the rankings. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Really appreciate a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and definitely do consider subscribing as well if it's your first time around here and you want to see more content like this moving forward for the FPL season. But I'll see you all in the next video.